Hello. So, hands up if you saw Tim Holt's new release of his Chapter 3 Sizzix dies and stamps. No, not stamps. Dies and things. I think that we would all love to have every single thing Tim Holt's ever releases, but for me, that's definitely a no-no. One, because we're in the UK, and two, because I can't really afford it, to be perfectly honest, although I'd love to. So I was really inspired by some of the makes and wanted to make something with a similar kind of feel and look, but without the new products. Don't have any of the new products. I am going to be using some of the older products that Tim Holtz has, but I will be showing maybe alternatives where I can and what you could use instead. So I made this tag yesterday, and I'm not going to lie to you, it took hours. So I'm going to try and film another one, or probably have to work on two as I'm going along, but it might come in 2 installments. Today we will definitely achieve part 1, which is creating a tag base. So I think the make that this was inspired by, I think her name was Zoe, and she had used one of the etc tags, and I just cannot warrant spending that kind of money on those tags. I wish I could, but I'm going to show you how I made this one. If you can see, it looks solid. It's not kind of, well, it looks woodish. It's not. It's obviously made of cardboard. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So the first thing is I have 2 pieces of cardboard cut, and this is actually, oh, there you go, you can see exactly what it is. It's a coronavirus test set box, and I've cut them. This one is 7.5 by 4 inches, and this one is approximately 5.25 by 3.25 inches. It's slightly smaller, I think. I think that's slightly smaller than 3.25, but they fit on top of each other, so that's what I wanted. Now, obviously, it's cardboard, so you get that kind of cardboard open edge. So part 1 is we need to cut the edges of. I thought it was really organised. Here it is. Here it is. I'm going to cut the tag edge. So I just used my little template, and I'm cutting the biggest edge that I have, like so. This is actually the first time I've filmed with Jay in the room, because it's going to be such a long one. Jay's staying. Say hi, Jay.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. Jay's here. He's not usually here. So I probably won't be able to talk properly, even more than usual. Anyway, we've now got our 2 pieces. So step 1 is I've got just a scrap piece of card and my palette knife. And the first thing you need is modelling paste. Now, most of what I do, you can do with modelling paste, but I'm going to use a variety of products. Modelling paste is probably the one thing you cannot do without on this project, but there are recipes on YouTube to make your own. So I'm just going to put a little bit of modelling paste on my scrap cardboard. We might need more of that. I will speed some of this up because it is quite a long process. So as you can see, we've got the gaps in the cardboard, and I'm just going to take some of the modelling paste with my finger and just rub that into those holes. Now this is quite a long process to start with, and you don't have to be perfect with it. I quite like it when it's a little bit bumpy here and there. So I'm just going to go around like this, pushing that modelling paste into those gaps. If I come a little bit closer, try and show you, and just rub it down and then rub it across like so. You might need to come over a few bits, but that is the principle of getting this modelling paste into those holes. So I'm going to speed it up now as I just carry on working around. Okay, so in true fashion, I missed a step. So this is almost dry because it's quite thin that I applied that, didn't put it on too thick. So what you need is a sheet of ivory cardstock, or any colour cardstock really, that's fine. And you need to mount, obviously, the shiny side of your cardboard, or one side of your cardboard. If you're using a straightforward cardboard box, you probably won't need to mount it at all. You could paint straight onto it. So let me just very quickly rectify my error. It's easier to do this before you use the modelling paste. The reason being is you've then got a kind of crisp edge to push the modelling paste against with that cardstock. But of course, I forgot. So slide that into place. Leave that for a moment. And I'm just going to quickly cut around it. I'm just going to touch some of these areas up, and you'll see if you've got that cardstock there, it's actually a lot easier to get into the edge of that cardboard. Definitely need that cardboard. Definitely need the cardstock on the back. It makes a world of difference while you're trying to force that modelling paste into that cardboard at the edges. Right, so this needs to dry, and we're going to switch between a few of the processes because some things will take a lot longer than other things. So this is going to dry. I'm going to put that aside. I actually have a pre-dried one here ready to go. I don't know if you can see how neat that edge looks now. Obviously I've left some little flaws in there because it looks better if you do. Put those aside. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the raised, I'm not sure what that's called. Okay, so I have another piece of cardstock and I have a 3/4 inch punch, and I need five circles like so. Okay, and it is just a case of gluing one on top of the other. Use a good strong glue, whatever you are happy to use. I'm using Fabri-Tac. If I can get it to come out. Right, now you need to work quite quickly to get these together. You don't want to use a glue that's too fast drying. You do want to make sure you go right to the edge of your circle. You don't need an absolute ton of glue, but you need a good seal because we're going to be chucking quite a lot at this. So there we go. Now what you need to do quite quickly is make sure you squeeze all the way around the edge to get a really nice finish on there. I know we're going to be filling it with paints and pastes and all sorts, but we need this to be closed so we don't get any product in those gaps. Okay, that needs a little minute to dry. So here's one that I made earlier. Now what we need to do is put our hole in, and it's quite important we get this as close to the middle as we can. So I am going to put a guide mark in there. I don't always, but for this I'm not going to do it by eye too much. I'm going to do that with a or this tool. So I'm going to put my disc into my crocodile, line up my hole and punch that. Now it's quite thick, so again I'm going to have to poke that out. And the next thing I'm going to do is line it up on my tag, use my circle to draw the hole, and then I'll use my punch again to punch that out. I don't do these together because there's always a chance you're going to get it wrong. And now this needs to be glued to that. And again, make sure you put glue all the way around the edges. You want these edges sealed, so around the edge of the circle and around the hole. The glue residue is fine. It doesn't matter if you get glue oozing out, because that's all going to be covered up. And we need to put that over that hole nicely. Use my right, so make sure that's nicely in place. Okay, so these are almost ready to crackle. They're almost ready to crackle. So the next step is to put the crackle paste over here. And I am using the textured paste opaque crackle, and it's from Ranger. There are loads of brands and I am sure they're much samey, so whatever you have. If you do not have this, I have made this effect with the textured paste. Let me just show you the textured paste method first. So use this scrap of cardboard, grab my textured paste. All I've done is I have scraped on my textured paste and just dabbed it like so. Okay, so you can get texture without crackle. You don't need crackle. That's an option, but I am using crackle. So basically I work across the top and down one side and then the opposite corner. Either way it's fine, doesn't really matter which side you work on, it's a preference, whatever. And this stuff you don't want on too thick, so I'm just gonna wipe it on. And in some areas what I'm going to do is just have a little bit coming up the side like so, just here and there. I'll put a little bit around the edge here, across the top, and a little bit across there. You have to work reasonably quickly with this because it doesn't last. It starts to dry quite quickly, so you don't want to take too much time doing this, and the more you go over it the worse it's going to look. You want to just do it as quickly as you can. And just get these little bits showing here. I'm going to go all the way up actually, just because I feel like it. Like I said, I'm just putting a few little raised areas around here and there, just by dabbing a tiny amount on. It doesn't take a lot. I think I want a bit more up here. Just a bit. Okay. And then this, I'm going to cover the whole thing, definitely around the edges. Okay, now this has to be dried or left to dry. It's better if it's dried by air. You can start it off with your heat tool. So I'm just going to be back when this is dry. These are now dry. You can see our crackles. Where you've put it on a bit thicker, you'll get larger crackles and smaller crackles where it's a bit thinner. That looks pretty cool. Didn't get enough here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add to that bit slightly. Okay, so that's much better. It's still cracking, so that will just carry on doing its thing. Just gonna bend this back into place. A good tip is turning it over and heating it from the back. That will straighten it out. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is this one. We don't really need to gesso over the crackle paste, but this one has still got some raw cardstock here, so I'm going to gesso this. Brilliant. So I'm going to pop these aside to dry, and I'm going to grab this spare piece of card because later on in the project we're going to be using some metal pieces. Now on the last tag I did my brad too. I'm not going to worry about my brad this time round. But for this is a complete step that you could miss. You need your Distress Collage medium. You need a brush to apply the gel medium. And I have two colours of Distress Embossing Glaze. So this one is Hickory Smoke and this one is Weathered Wood. What this does is, if you can see, it's actually given the metal pieces a bit of texture, and you can see these brads I haven't done this to, but that one I did. I'm not bothering with any of these at the moment. So the reason we're doing this now is because it needs quite a while to dry. We'll do one at a time. That brush is probably not, this brush is better. So I'm just putting a small amount on my brush, and I'm gonna apply the matte medium, making sure I get in those numbers. Get that in there. And now I need a clean sheet of paper, which I should have got out first, because I've glued on that one. Slide that onto there. Get my tweezers. Whoops, that was terrible. Of course, it's a double sheet of paper, that's why that was a bit difficult. Put this back on my paper, and then I'm going to put Hickory Smoke over that other corner, and just maybe a little bit of overlap here and there. Okay, now the reason we need to do these earlier is because this has to dry before we can heat emboss it. We can't heat emboss it. Let's bring the glue sheet back in. We can't heat emboss it until the glue is dry. Like I said, this step can be completely missed if you like. Just gonna slide these, if I can, onto my sheet. And I'm literally just going to put those aside for quite a while. The next step is, now they're just about dry, is we need to colour them. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually paint the edge of my pieces. So again, let me just cut. This is a previous piece of glue paper. I am using raw umber. It gives me a really nice dark wood kind of effect look. So I'm just gonna, and this paint is terrible to get out. Right, you either get loads or it doesn't come out at all. I'm just gonna pop my spatulas in my water. And I have another really old tatty brush, perfect for this project. And all I'm gonna do is go round so you can now see after the first coat. We might need to touch up at the end and we might get things on this and need to repaint at the end slightly, but I always do it now because it just gives a nice edge and it makes you feel like your project's almost done when it's not. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly give this a bit of a dry. I actually paint the back right at the very end only because I get so much on my board. This looks quite a mess by the end. So I will paint the back like so. But I do that at the end. Obviously we've got this brown paint. I'm going to keep that aside because I might incorporate that here and there. So the first thing to colour these, I'm going to grab a baby wipe. That's very needed. And the first thing I'm going to do is go in with some Gathered Twig Distress spray. Use the baby wipe. Try and just push that into some of those cracks. And they will look completely different at the end, but that's just how I started mine yesterday. When I started I had no idea where I was going with it really, but that's part and parcel of doing a project like this. Now I didn't back this because it's going to be mounted onto there. You can paint the back of it later. And this is where you'll find some of your little bits of crackle paste might come away, but that's fine. Okay. Love this look. It looks like a plastered wall look. And that's just the spray over the top of that gesso. Okay, I'm going to dry this layer. I already love the look of that. Right, so colour theme. Obviously it's entirely up to you what you do, but I just love that kind of rust old patina look. So I'm going for blues. Now I'm going to work on the tag first, so I'm going to put that aside for now. and I'm using salvage patina and speckled egg. And again, I need to clean off one of my rather rough brushes. I have a couple of sets. These are really cheap, like kids brushes. They're quite rough and stiff, which are perfect for this. So I work straight onto my board because I know I'm going to use all this paint. Dab the brush and then dab where you want your areas of blue. Okay, I'm now going to go in with some speckled egg. I'll dry this. Now I need to grunge this up quite a lot. I'm just trying to remember what I did with the last one. I think... What did I do? Bloody hell. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add some texture into this area where there is none at the moment. And I know this is a product that probably not everyone will have. But I'm going to use my Eyes Ink glitter. Again, you want a really old brush for this. So I'm just going to add... Oh, wrong thing. No, ignore that. This is not the right product, but I do want this product, but it's not in the right place. That's a rather big mess up. I'm going to rub this over here. Give this a bit more of a darker feel. This was not quite the route I was going to go, but it is now. This should have gone on at the end. Complete wrong product here. Just ignore this step. This is the product I want, diamonds. And this one is black coffee. I'm just using this around the area that I haven't got the paste. Okay, that's what I wanted. I'm going to dry this. Okay, so I'm going to go back in with the blue. Obviously, this is now quite dark in there, which, you know, I was going to go over with that iced tea in the end, or the black, the ice, but I wasn't actually going to do it just then. So these were the two products that I was going to use, but not in the order I've used them in now. However, you never know, might actually look better now. So I'm just going to go back in with some blue to kind of cover some of that brown. Just kind of blending that in a little bit more. Take the baby white, it's probably gone a little bit heavy with that. Just going to keep layering until I'm happy with what I've got, and then I'm just going to go back in with a bit of the eggshell. Is it eggshell? Speckled egg, even. Right, I'm going to bring in my brown that I have left. Right, dry this. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. The last thing, well, not the last thing actually, that's a lie, is I'm going to use the golden nickel Azo Gold. And just use a little bit of this at a time. Your colour choice is completely up to you. You don't have to use anything like what I am using. And this is just basically translucent. My baby wipe at the ready. You can see kind of what they will look like when they sit on top of each other. That needs to be darkened up a little bit still. So this is where I would have applied my ice. So I'm going to go back in with some ice. Okay, now I don't think this is dark enough, and I'm not sure if this is going to really have the effect I want, but I'm going to go in around there. Just use my finger to get in there. Okay, I'm going to give these a dry. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do to these right now, the eyes ink takes quite a while to dry. It stays sticky for quite a long time. Is I'm going to use some of my Salvage Patina Oxide. And I've got my baby wipe at the ready. I'm only going to kind of half pump this. I don't want it to come out like that. Take a little bit of that off. This is obviously going to dry a lot lighter anyway. I do want to get a little bit of blue down there. Okay. So I'm going to leave it here for now and let this completely dry before I go in with the next little thing that I want to do. Just gonna dab some of that off. Okay, and that. Right, I will be back. These are now nice and dry, and what I did while I was waiting is I painted up the other set. I tried to keep these a bit lighter. I mean, they're both much lighter than the original one, but still not too light, but I'm happy with that. And the other thing I did, because it does take a long time, is I went ahead and heat embossed those metal pieces, because they do take a while. You can actually read that. It's just not very clear in this light. There we go. So those are done. I'm ready to go. So the last thing to do to there's two things that we need to do to these. I think I'm going to start with, I'm going to paint the back of that, although we don't need to. So I've got a brush. It's fairly dry now. I'm going to do these two as well. This is why I don't paint until closer to the end, and then I'll give my board a good clean. So I'm gonna just, there's two things that I do. Just put some more brown on here, and that's the raw umber. So I'm just literally going to brush, and what I'm doing is I'm going to start from the top and brush up. I'm going to go in that hole and brush up like so, because I want the brush marks to just go one way. So I'm going to dry these. I'm not going to dry the other two pieces. I don't need to dry those yet. And the final thing I'm going to do to the back is I'm going to use my golden Azo gold. Put a little bit on there. Probably need a bit more than that. And I'm just going to use a baby wipe to apply this. And I'm just going to rub it on. So if you can now see the difference between those two. I'll do this one. Is that part. Now these are still a bit warm, so I'm just going to let those dry. While I'm doing that, I've just stuck a fingerprint in the back of this. This is just so they're a bit darker on the back, and when you glue them on, you're not going to see the white if you look from the side. So it doesn't matter what these look like. That's clean enough. Okay, so the final thing is the metallic gold wax. And I'm addicted to this stuff. I seem to be putting this on absolutely everything. And I do it in exactly the same way. I mean, a lot of mixed media artists will tell you to wear gloves when you're using products, but even when I was dealing with photography chemicals, I still had to get in there with my hands. It just, I don't know. It's just how I do it, just how I roll. And I'm just going to start by going over the edges, and where I've made those little raised areas, I'm going to pay particular attention to those, and around the edge of that. It's going a little bit heavy, so I'm going to go back over this with a little bit of the black eyes ink. Ice ink is the brand, Ice is the product. There you go. So as far as part one is concerned, these are kind of, they're done. I'm happy with how these have turned out. So part two will be us creating the kind of collage montage top for those. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that. I will be back with part two tomorrow.